Now there's an issue that has recently come to my attention that we need to discuss right now. Is that okay with you, honey? Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay. Are you ready? 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 Are you ready?
Men don't have the right to suffrage. They just say, in America, men don't have suffrage. I say, yeah, they do. I say, no, it's tied to the draft. Right? That's a much better introduction to that double standard than trying to explain women got the right to vote without being drafted. If you put it in that way, it sounds like you're against female suffrage. If instead you flip it the other way, then what you realize is that this has kind of been left hanging there. So it's kind of a softer way to expose that double standard, is to say men don't have suffrage. Men don't have suffrage. It's ironically more shocking, yet softer. This was something that Karen Straughan addressed in the most recent ICMI footage, which Paul Elan's been slowly uploading. He's been slow rolling it. It's been very fun to watch that. So a lot of this topic is how to bring more women into the men's rights movement. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things to be discussed here. What I want to focus on is sort of within the red pill manosphere perspective, right? So sort of like including anybody who's new to it, but not so much like the outreach to other people. So first I want to talk about femRAs from what I imagine their perspective to be. Because to a large degree, I feel like a femRA. I feel more like a femRA than an MRA, really. So it's sort of like but in this way I don't, because I don't get the same treatment that the femRAs get, which is a double-edged sword. There's sort of, even Karen Straughan's with it, she's been like, a lot of times I said kind of the same things that other people had said, but because they heard a woman say it caught them. And so many people have said, hey, I did hear this for the second time, and because it was from a woman, like, it clicked with me. And that's an important thing to remember for a lot of reasons. And then the point isn't just, I don't fucking care about, all these femRAs have this attention that's unearned. Fuck that. I want as many MRAs to have as much unearned attention as possible. If women get unearned attention as femRAs, that's a good thing. Yeah, it'd be great if everybody who is an MRA had unearned attention, because, and I guess it depends on your definition of earn. You're speaking to probably the most important issues, certainly the most important gender issues by my standards, whatever that's worth. So the point is that a lot of people view that, and then there's like a sort of resentment, and I think that's retarded. You should just get over that. But the other aspect of it is that you have women who, there's a learning curve to men's issues, right? Like when I attended the International Conference on Men's Issues in the first year, 2014, mostly I was there to see Molyneux, but like I was also following these like MRA people because like it was kind of blowing my mind, all the shit they were pointing out, and like I had an eco-feminist professor, I didn't fucking know any of this, like it was like, what the hell? Like, but I even came in there with the whole mindset of like, oh, well, feminism must have just gone off the rails at some point, right? That kind of like purple pilly mindset. And then at the ICMI, when I was listening to the speeches and when I was talking to other people there, is when I realized, oh, wow, I can't really even defend first or second wave feminism. And like, yeah, it is really in the core and the root of it. So that I consider that to be my kind of red pilling moment. But the point is that you have people in that kind of purple pillish area, and like, because of all this suspicion surrounding, a lot of it's the trad thought scare, and a lot of now the like unearned attention supposedly is all being channeled. I think it's more, insofar as it's a thing, definitely slanted towards the traditional conservative women. So they walk into an environment and they're coming out of a mindset that was saying, oh, well, like, women are oppressed and men think in these ways and they're misogynistic or whatever. And then if they see like the most unhinged rhetoric of the manosphere, like, obviously, like, there's a risk of it kind of confirming that suspicion and then just causing a rejection, right? And that's not what we want. What you want is as many femRAs as possible. So the unearned attention's not a bad thing, but the other thing is that even if you think, for example, like women shouldn't be involved or whatever, if a femRA is capable of red pilling men and then those men become MRAs, like, then what you can do is just blank the femRA's contributions, except insofar as they bring men in. And on that empirical basis alone, you don't have grounds to say, like, to shit on, like, the Honey Badgers or Karen Straughan or, Tara Palmatier, like, any of these people. And I'm not saying, of course, that you should just discount everything someone says. I'm saying you could, and then you still wouldn't have a justification for this sort of suspicion towards women. Now, one thing that this was brought up on a recent stream, Prim and Anna Cherry did together, and it was really fun, really interesting stream to listen to. I recommend that one. They were talking about, largely it was an article from, I think, Psychology Today. I think that was what it was. It was a bit of a mixed bag, to be charitable. The article, I mean. One of the things that Anna Cherry had brought up is she's like, I'm the epitome of the cool girl. I love being the cool girl. Like, I want to be her, and I get that there's criticism of it, and the criticism is totally fucking justified, and women do go into men's spaces and do ruin shit, and we do need to have spaces that are, like, just for men, And I like the way that she addressed that issue, and I think that really ties into kind of the heart of the suspicion toward femRAs, is that they're using it basically as an avenue to kind of, like, cover and jump ship. I mean, if you really think about it, with this whole larger narrative, what often happens is we shit on all of feminism because that's appropriate, but then you look at the actions of individual people on the cusp of it, people who are like 20, 30 years old, and then see their actions as like a continuance of shit going all the way back through all the ways of feminism. And that's retarded because, they're sitting there like, dude, we just got here. You know what I mean? Like, we just got here. Let's say, for example, the next generation of women prove a lot of the theories of gynocentrism wrong just in their actions. It wouldn't be disproving the theory, it would just be that they somehow managed to change their behavior to such an extreme extent that now it's not a worry anymore. If you think about it, yeah, it's unlikely, right? It's a little bit of a Hail Mary play. It's, and like, yeah, it's not the likeliest scenario. We don't have a lot of evidence necessarily to work with to state that will be the case. We shouldn't rely on something like that happening. But it wouldn't be the craziest thing that's ever happened. It would not be the crazier things have happened. So I think that ball should be left in women's court. Let's see. They need to be given a chance, because we have to remember that if you're a young person, like, you still have a chance to affect and change your destiny. Maybe you condemn everybody over 50 because, why didn't you stop communism? Why didn't you stop feminism? Why did you just let it happen? Why did you let it get this bad? And maybe 30 years from now, we'll be saying that to 20-year-olds, like, why did you let it get this bad? We can argue over who had more or less excuses, sure. But we know what needs to be done. What needs to be done is we need to attack feminism head on, and we need to attack all of it. All of that needs to be corrected. So Turd Flinging Monkey often, his solution is take women's rights away. Women can't vote. Like, that's the main one, is women can't vote. I think that women need to be exposed to voices like Turd Flinging Monkeys, and we need to show to them, like, do we have evidence to suggest that there is a solution that you can deliver that is not eliminating female suffrage? It's not even to say do it. It's like, what if it was on the table and then they could see it? Do you think that might affect their behavior? Like, if somebody has a gun and they take a gun and put it on the table, it affects people on a psychological level. It affects, like, your blood pressure. It has effects. Like, it does. And it should. It probably should. For good reasons. So the other part of it is, on a less extreme note, is kind of taking that down through all of the different, the different social situations. And this is where, a lot of men, I think, would say, the suspicion toward femmes, it's not all of these things. It's about self-protection, right? It's about protecting yourself. It's that if you let women in, it's that they could potentially hurt men, as they do, and as our legal systems allow them to and enable them in a lot of cases, right? There's an argument to be made for self-protection, and this is something everybody has to keep in mind. If you're a femme experiencing a lot of issues with men within the manosphere, remember like how much of this is just based in like self-protection. They're trying to protect themselves fundamentally, and I think that gives you a little bit of space to kind of contextualize some of that in a way that might be a little more charitable. But on the flip side, for men in the self-protection argument, take the female solution as though it's never going to happen. Just take all the voices of all the females, if you have to, blank them out, but accept that insofar as they're capable of drawing more men into the men's movement, they're, you can't discount that. So like the MGTOW perspective toward the manosphere is largely, I think it's pointless, but if that's what you want to do it. I best wish, please prove us wrong, please, right? And I think that within the manosphere, there's space for that attitude towards, I guess, new voices within it, particularly those regarded with suspicion, which would be especially femmes, to say, yeah, maybe femmes are pointless, but, you want to prove us wrong, great. So I think that there's kind of a space for, I guess, a dark red pill, if you need that to be a male-exclusive space. And I think a lot of that does make sense within the context of maybe like men's groups or men's organizations that kind of focus on those sort of self-help and that thing, which is a lot of kind of on-the-ground activism, which there's obviously not enough of. But then in the advocacy space, there's a lot more flexibility because, people aren't just taking things at face value all the time. People are listening to voices that they don't completely agree with, and then they're taking what they want from it, synthesizing something new, and that's how conversation works. And that needs to be something that's open and not limited. And of course, the existence of an exclusively male approach to men's activism and or men's advocacy is that creates more space for the co-ed approach as well. Because if there is that space established and it is safe and it's not being tainted or corrupted or subverted in some way, that exists and that's there, right? So then that means that it's not like the last bastion that's being infiltrated by women. And I think that, the manosphere has grown, it seems, to such a degree, and it seems like a pretty grassroots level. I think that we'd see a lot more of it if there was less YouTube and Twitter, like less basically big media leftist censorship. What if you spin it to women and say, look, men aren't trusting or relying on you to solve the problem. We've already accepted that, it's fucking pointless, it's hopeless, your IQ is lower on average, you're not as strong, you always just cluster in the middle, you're always the support role, you're just not going to do the DPS we need, it's just not going to be a thing, and that's fine, it's okay, because men can protect themselves, they're going to MGTOW, they're going to have love dolls, they're going to, we're going to have prenups for anyone who does want to get married, mandatory paternity tests for every baby, basically telling women, like, you're going to get replaced by a doll. Like, women are literally going to be replaced by, like, plastic bags for artificial uteri and dolls. How does that make you feel? Like, don't you want to prevent that? Like, how fucking embarrassing is that? Like, RIP women had a good run, went extinct because men invented fucking love dolls and plastic bags that they can grow babies in without you. And all you had to do was just be honest about the women's movement. That's all you had to do, was just speak out and just be honest about the women's movement, have a little bit of empathy and compassion and concern, sprinkle a little bit of that charity toward maybe exclusively male things, right? Really, really not a lot's being asked, right? And we're kind of operating on 0% empathy and care and concern for men and boys. So like, imagine if that was 5%. Like, shit. Imagine if that was 5%. Something Karen's trying to point it out before. It's basically the need for men's rights activism is, or rather, men's rights activism is never going to outlast the need for men's rights activism. Like, the whole thing will pitter and die out long before men actually have equality, because things needed to get this bad for it to even begin. So unless it's actually this bad, there's not even a conversation. And like it only needs to get like maybe halfway better, and then men will say, "Oh fuck it, we got halfway." They'll be the bigger man at that point. I hope not. I hope that men just like kind of learn something from the lesson, and that humans as a species grow from it, and that this becomes a really important moment. I think this could potentially, this entire discussion, this unveiling of feminism and all of the lessons it has. I think this is one of the greatest moral lessons humans have ever stumbled upon. It's a really exciting fucking thing. Like it's not just people bitching on the internet. Like it's a really crazy phenomenon. It's really fucking fun to watch it unfold, and it's fascinating. Thank you all for watching, and have a great night. Bye.
Your makeup is terrible. Your makeup is terrible. Your makeup is terrible. Your makeup is terrible, but I love you anyway. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Your makeup is...
I get asked a lot over the last 9 years or so, why do you do what you do? Even more so these days, since I've been speaking to more virgin bums on virgin seats than ever before, AM talk radio shows and podcasts that don't deal with these issues. And there's really no single answer to why I do what I do. I'm sure there are people out there who, when asked why Karen Straughan does what she does, they'll say she has sons and other men in her life, and she cares about them. And while it's certainly true, that's not the whole story by a long shot. I'm not just a mama bear protecting her cubs. I could do that by advising my sons to go their own way, which I have. Give them the male equivalent of that conversation every parent has with their daughter regarding men who might want to take advantage of them. You give a different talk to your son, but the point is the same: how to avoid getting hurt by the opposite sex. And I do what I can to instill proper values in them, including those values that acknowledge their inherent value. If that were the only reason, I wouldn't be here in London. Why would I be? My sons will be fine. They won't be falling into any traps or pits specially designed to destroy men, because they'll know them when they see them, and they'll see them for what they are. And while I don't see myself as a modern-day Mother Jones, nor would I describe myself as her figurative daughter, I find myself in agreement with her approach to social and human rights issues. You can't help women by hurting men, and you can't help men by hurting women. We're stuck with each other. We are fellow travelers on this journey through life, and if I'm going on a long road trip, I'd sure rather be stuck in the car with someone who sees me as a fellow traveler rather than an adversary or potential exploiter. Perhaps most troubling is that men have stepped up and supported women's causes for a long time now. Not just since the 1960s and 70s, when male feminists like Warren Farrell took up the causes of equal pay and equal respect for women. In the UK, women's suffrage had support from the majority of MPs, all of them male, by 1910, for crying out loud. No one even asks men why. Why would you walk a mile in her shoes? Why would you pin a white ribbon on your lapel? Why would you take a pledge take pledges and run in a fun run to raise money and awareness for breast cancer? Why would you do that? Why? Nobody would ask a man those questions. Why would anyone ask a man why he would support an initiative to end partner violence against women, or why he would support an initiative to find a cure for breast cancer? We all know the answer. It's because men view these causes as worthy of their support and advocacy. Because men all have mothers, grandmothers, sisters, wives, daughters, and friends, female friends that they love, girls and women in their lives they want to see safe and content and free. And yet when I go on some talk radio show for a 12-minute spot, almost invariably the first thing I am asked is, why do I do this? Why do you do this? How did I find myself advocating for men's rights and men's issues? This is just so strange. Why would a woman do it? And I almost always say something other than, why wouldn't I? Even though that's really the proper answer. And to my mind, that's the saddest thing of all. That all of these men, mostly male radio show hosts, who probably would put on 4-inch heels and hobble their way around a public square or jogging track to walk a mile in her shoes to end domestic violence. Society understands why they do that, and they understand why they would do that. And yet society doesn't understand why I've laced up a pair of metaphorical steel-toed work boots and marched my clomping mile for the men and boys in my life. They need to ask. They just don't get it.
Each section of the cycle represents a different attitude towards the potential inconvenience and discomfort involved in adopting a disruptive technology. The first market for a new technology is the innovators and the disruptors, the early adopters, the people who are eager to embrace the new because it is new. The second is the visionaries. These people who can see how a new technology can revolutionize how they do business. The third segment is the early majority, the pragmatists. They're only interested in a technology once it's proven to improve productivity. And they want to invest only in technology leaders that have full support of the marketplace. Then there's the late majority, the conservatives. The conservatives aren't as comfortable with new technology as the pragmatists, so they wait until the learning curve is as flat as possible before adopting it. Then there are laggards. They don't want it, screw you for making it. The reason why promising new technologies tank is because there is a chasm between first adopters, innovators and visionaries, and the early majority, the pragmatists. First adopters will embrace a new idea, a new technology, because it's new. The early majority only embraces it if it has social proof. In this case, social proof is your technology being used by other pragmatists, which creates a catch-22. How do you sell yourself to the marketplace if selling to yourself to the marketplace requires selling already having been sold to the marketplace? Men's rights constitutes a disruptive, what I would call social technology. Disruptive technologies are those technologies that are discontinuous from what has come before it. Some technologies have slow advances that don't require people to change their behavior. Disruptive technology requires a radical change in behavior. For example, all of the behavioral changes required to transition from horse-drawn carriages to automobiles. As for what a social technology is, human beings are super social. There is no other species like us. You put us in little boxes, and you stack us up, and we love it. It's a city! Other animals would be tearing each other's faces off. Compared to us, our nearest relatives, chimps, are extreme individualists to the point of being sociopaths. I mean, in our terms. In their own terms, they're just chimps. We live in extensive, complex, and very abstract systems of reciprocal altruism. Language is a system of reciprocal altruism because you avoid lying even when it would benefit you, so you can enjoy the greater benefit of being able to rely on other people's words when you need to. Language is one of the most fundamental systems of reciprocal altruism. But like language, money is also a system of reciprocal altruism. So is transit, supermarkets, roadways, and the list goes on and on. All systems of reciprocal altruism that we rely on to survive. We all have little voices in our head saying things like, don't be a thief, don't be a liar, don't be rude. Those little voices represent the individual maintaining the pro-social habits that if all individuals follow, create smoothly functioning systems of reciprocal altruism that we all benefit from. So our identities represent that we've sacrificed something to buy in, but we're also entitled to enjoy a ride on our crazy train called a society. Now, when it comes to a gender, the identity for men is save women, or save those vulnerable creatures women advocate for, such as children, minorities, and animals. This is the identity that men put their own needs aside to embody, that of savior. It's how they feel that they've earned their ticket to society. The identity for women is more about feeling valued when you're being served, or saved and served, and there's a sacrifice in that, but we'll come to that later. The current marketplace for social technology is defined by giving men a sense that they have earned their ticket to participate in society. Men are told and tend to learn that they need to earn a ticket, whereas women, not so much. So men are always on the lookout for ways to earn that ticket. Anita Sarkeesian noted that the damsel in distress trope sells games. It sells games, it sells books, it sells charities, and it sells political movements. Feminism is a profitable monopoly in this marketplace. It's managed to leverage a number of resource extraction operations to increase its overall female victimhood holdings, namely its exploitation of victimhood commodities in minority communities via the intersectional pipeline and the regressive stack. Feminism even uses the strip mining wasteland it leaves behind in minority communities as an excuse why more feminism is needed. Men's rights is trying to not just disrupt an entrenched market leader, it's also trying to rewrite the rules of the marketplace entirely. We're trying to change how people get tickets. Instead of defining themselves as the saviors of others, men's rights asks men to consider that they may need saving. It's also asking women to let go of feeling entitled to tickets and do a little saving of their own in order to earn their gender identity as women. This means men's rights is beyond a simple disruptive technology like automobiles and computers and Segway. Men's rights is asking men and women to question fundamental aspects of how they structure their own identities. If you're on this side of that chasm, and you've got here not because you're the disagreeable type of person who questions everything and questions things even harder when someone tells them that they can't, if you're here because of something that happened to you, that ripped the blindfold off, think about how much pain you had to experience before you started questioning those fundamental aspects of your being. A lot. Can you really expect others to just accept what you're saying if you yourself had to go through something traumatic to do so? We perceive our identities as our ticket to take part in our systems of reciprocal altruism. As human beings, our access to those systems of reciprocal altruism is part of our survival instinct. When we lose our ticket, we feel abandoned. And because we feel abandoned and we are a super-social species, that means death is imminent. The negative-sum game exists because of the pressure to give men ways of serving women in order to earn a ticket to participate in our systems of reciprocal altruism. That's what men want. That's why the most motivating and effective victimhoods are the ones that are seen to only affect women, not men. The more male victims of the issue, the less motivated we become about that issue, and in turn, women feel like their tickets are being validated when they're being saved as women from distress and danger.